Hey friends, welcome back to episode 4 of Nothing Subtle here. This is your host, Leah. And before we begin, I have a confession to make. And really the confession is to hold myself accountable. You see, when I first started pondering the idea of doing a podcast, I was quite resistant. In fact, the thought of exposing myself and not knowing who's going to listen on the other end or watch on the other end was terrifying to me. And then also there was a thought of like, I have nothing to give. I'm not that interesting. Like, who's going to want to hear about my life? And all of those doubts and those thoughts I began to entertain until some really good friends of mine began to say like, hey, you should start a podcast, or have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And those kind of questions would begin to ruminate in my mind about what this would look like. And so fast forward, when I finally had it decided within, like, this is something I'm going to finally do, it was like I just knew what journal I was supposed to start with. See, the interesting thing is I have all these journals. A lot of them are never even finished. They're just wherever we moved or whatever ones I had, I would begin to write. But there was with one exception, because I had one journal that I had intentions with. One journal that was marked to be different. It was the journal that was intended to actually be letters or thoughts that were written out for my son. And it's actually the journal that we've been reading for the past couple episodes. But I knew that I was supposed to start with this one. For whatever reason, I allowed fear and doubt to determine that I wasn't going to start that way. And I didn't. I believe I read a memoir, the very first one. And although I don't regret that, it has been eating me up because I just felt like I failed myself, because I knew that wasn't how I was supposed to start. So here we are on episode 4, and we are going to continue the way that we should have always, with the journal of what lies within. So we are going to continue reading the very next journal entry, which was dated on, just make sure we're in the right place. Yes. Okay, so this is dated on August 15th of 2005. All right. So as I took out the journal to write all of this positive stuff, your father brought up his aunt, knowing what's going on, even though I told him before he's acting upset. I'm sorry if you're feeling rejected. Please don't. I accept you for who you are. Some positive stuff. I've come out of my way to see your father in Georgia. I got here on Saturday night. Things are going so good. Well, kind of good. He went to church on Sunday. He's been pretty nice to me and making some positive comments about you. I still have this sketchiness about him and his commitment level. I'm not sure if he realizes this is a lifetime commitment. He's just not ready to grow up. He has so many fears, but so do I. But I'm working on him. I'm really trying. My desire for you is to have a father, a family. I know deep down he cares for us. For now, may you only hear the sounds of joy. Your growth process, your fingerprints are being formed, and you will begin to form your hands around objects. You will be able to begin to form your hands around objects in my tummy. How amazing. I found myself struggling to read that one, not so much on an emotional level, but more of a disappointed, I guess, in myself, which is an emotion technically, but I guess I just was holding out for hope for him versus hope for something that I could provide or something that God would provide. And it's just disappointing. It's not a regret. It's not, I wish I would do it different. I'm sure there are things that I would do different. But in the moment of writing that, it's like, I don't know. I was thinking the other day, it's like every time I do one of these unknown what's like the specifics of what I wrote, it's like I feel like I'm being reintroduced to myself. Like hey, nice to meet you. This is your younger, very broken self. And it's an interesting process. It's complicated at times for me. In fact, there are times when I close down on the podcast and I walk away thinking like, oh my gosh, I feel so much more. Or gosh, that stirred this up in me. And so I'm just trying to pause without being quick, because when I read that, it's like, yeah, he had fears, but don't we all? Like, don't we all have fears? And here I was carrying a child and the turmoil that I was feeling. And my concern was over my unborn son feeling rejection. And now knowing, with the education that I have now, knowing how much that affects a baby in a womb, just the stress levels of a mother, and I just feel disappointed in myself. I just feel disappointed that I allowed the turmoil for so long, just holding out hope for him to be better, to choose better, and not even for me, but for my son. And that was such a big part of the stress that was going on when I was pregnant. Of course, the stress of like school and how am I going to pay for this and where am I going to live and those things. But the emotional was so taxing on me. It was so taxing. And it's like, I don't know, I almost feel like I did it to myself. Like what were you doing? Like, get your stuff together, Leah. Like, you got this. I don't know. I'm not condemning myself, but I do feel like I was a little soft. Like, I don't know, I guess I feel like when I read that, I was like desperate. Like so desperate for him to choose us, so desperate for him to say yes. Like, and when I think about that now and I look back, I'm like, you're not a desperate woman. You have value and worth and so much to offer. And man, when we're in a desperate situation, man, we will do some crazy things. And I hope I'm not alone in that. We will reach for about anything. And when our hope grows thin and we begin to feel like we're in despair, we will stoop down to do really foolish things. And I guess as I'm reading these now, like a few weeks in, and just discovering this desperateness that I had, desperate for more, desperate to be accepted, desperate for love, desperate for provision. And I was basically doing whatever I needed to fulfill or to relieve. It was really relieving myself of that desperation. Wow. I'm almost feeling guilty. Yeah, I think I feel guilty. You know, I struggle with the idea that when I see my son struggle with things now, I have a tendency to go back and think, did I cause that? Did I miss the mark somewhere? Could I have prevented this? What could I have done differently so that he wouldn't feel this way or this obstacle wouldn't be his? And I wonder about that. And I know that I was never going to knock it out of the park. None of us do. We're all going to make mistakes. But I don't know. There's this part of me that just feels so guilty. Guilty that I allowed myself so much stress. That I allowed a man to have so much power in my life, to have so much authority over me. One of the hardest lessons, that's for sure. But this guilt, this mom guilt, when I see my son struggle with whatever it might be, I just wonder where I went wrong. Like how I could have been better. Man. And that gets very sticky, very it's a dangerous road. And I've learned that I need to halt myself. It's almost like I feel jolted sometimes. Because if I allow myself to go down that guilt road for too long, I will get so stuck and it is hard to pull me out. And it's a mind game. It's like having to talk myself back out of this alleyway that I've just voluntarily walked down. No one told me it was my fault. No one told me I should have done it differently. No one's telling me I'm the one who jacked everything up. But man, I tell myself that. I am my worst enemy at times. And I guess I'll just echo what I have echoed so many times in the journals that I've read so far. Is that I only wanted, and I still only want the best for my kids. I want them to do better than I ever did. I want them to love stronger than I ever did. I want them to know that I am doing the best that I can. Until next time, friends. I'll see you then.